Hi guys, welcome to my first video of the new year. I'm moving back to a weekly Thursday upload schedule after my little break post-Christmas. So if you want to have those videos show up in your feed, make sure you're subscribed right down below. Today's video, I'm going to be making molds out of silicone and then casting in resin some of my vintage button collection. So I'm going to be making my mold in this. It is an old Tupperware that I lost the lid to, just glass, so I'm going to be picking out enough buttons to fill up the bottom of that. I'm only molding flat buttons today instead of shank buttons. Here are two I already knew I wanted to mold. So the criteria I'm looking for is a button that's interesting because of its shape and texture. Buttons that are cool because of their color are obviously not going to work, or the material that they're made with, because what we're picking up is texture. Also cloth buttons, leather buttons, those sorts of things I wasn't gonna do. Most of them are shank buttons anyway, which I'm not doing in this video, but just going for interesting, detailed, textured flat buttons. If you would like to see a video about using this method to make shank buttons as well, let me know and I can get one of those together. It's a little more complicated because you have to set a shank into the back while the resin is curing. Here are the buttons that I have picked out. I'm hot gluing them down, trying to get a good seal all the way around the edge and around the little holes in the center without blocking those holes with hot glue. This is to stop the silicone from seeping underneath them and sealing them inside. You can get them out, it's just a neater mold if they don't do that in the first place. I got this molding silicone off of Amazon. I'll link it in the description below. It's just sort of some random off-brand molding silicone. Mix it 2 parts, pour it in, and then I babysit my mold for a while and try and get all of the air bubbles I possibly can out of those little buttonholes with a pin. And I usually peek from below to see if there are air bubbles. I accidentally tilted it this time, so I did get some bubbles. And since I'm using a container that is not breakable, it takes a little while to wedge the edges out there. Then I'm just clipping the spillover off of the molds with some shear cutters. There are a few that got bubbles in the buttonholes, so unfortunately they won't be useful as buttons. Now I'm mixing up the resin. I use Art & Glow brand resin. It's a 2-part epoxy resin. It's the same deal as the silicone. You pour the 2 parts in equally, mix it up. I'm adding some liquid colorant in black and a little bit of black mica into this, because black shows details really well. I'm just filling up a little syringe and filling all of those little button molds up, carefully trying to let it fill in on every level so it has as few bubbles as possible. I don't have a pressure pot or a vacuum chamber, so whatever bubbles I'm left with, I am left with. and then it just has to cure. This is the most satisfying part, popping all the buttons out. I did fill the ones that don't have buttonholes in them. They could be useful for like a craft project where you're gluing buttons to something, but they are not functional buttons unless I drill the buttonholes out, unfortunately. But most of the buttons came out as perfectly functional. And there's a little cleanup on some of these. Just use the same flush cutters that I used to clean up the mold to trim the little bits of spillover off of the edges of the buttons. You can also sand down the backs so that they're nice and smooth. I didn't do that because when I'm using these buttons it's on projects that I'm doing and I don't have any sharp edges on the backs or anything to worry about, so I don't really mind. The back is sewn to a garment, so. And there we have it. Collection of reproduction vintage buttons. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw and would like to see more, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you want to see what I was up to most recently, that video is on the screen for you.